Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Sherab Jin logging in, and today I'm really excited to present to you the second episode of the Echo Flow podcast. For the past few days, I've been struggling to find a quiet place to do this recording, as I was actually in my grandparents' old apartment in the middle of bustling Georgetown City. And today I made my way home to a quiet room, and so here I am. As mentioned in our introduction, today we'll be elaborating about flow characteristics and flow triggers. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, if you're listening to this, you may or may not be experiencing flow right now, depending on how much you enjoy listening to this podcast, of course. But I can swear that you've definitely experienced flow before. In fact, everyone has experienced flow at least in their early stages of life. The fact that we can walk, run, speak a language, or make simple mathematical calculations means that we've actually used flow to learn those skills and integrated them into our body and mind, so much so that we've probably forgotten about the experience. Let me try and bring you back to our forgotten childhood memory. Now imagine yourself as a baby infant in a cradle. Your eyes are open and you're looking around eagerly with curiosity. It's quite amazing how the giants around you are walking about vertically when all you could do was to move your fingers and toes and stare up at the sky. Okay, I mean the ceiling, of course. You're probably indoor, right? But you try to make some odd sound with your mouth, like beep, beep. And all of a sudden you're rewarded with some food. The next day you accidentally smile at your mom and you're given another hug. How wonderful. Over time you learn that if you can attract attention, you get something nice back in return. And then you invest all your attention in getting more attention. One day, with all your might, you're able to roll over to one side and push yourself up to sit. Your parents were exhilarated. Dad took you out of the cradle and placed you on the floor. You realize now that you can use your mobile arms and legs to crawl around. You probably wonder why you're still not capable of standing on 2 feet. But who cares? With this newfound ability to crawl, you can now explore the world around you on all 4 limbs and go around exploring every corner of the room. You could even crawl to your dad now and ask him for food.
I love Daddy.
Kinesthetic learning had just begun. You're unaware, though, that through the act of constant crawling, you're actually building up muscles throughout all 4 limbs. And over time, you build up enough core strength that all of a sudden, one day you were able to support yourself up by holding onto the leg of a chair and maybe even start walking with arms supported by a piece of wall. Of course, you might stumble, fall, and cry like a baby, but you're a baby anyway, so it's okay. But by overcoming those inner fears and obstacles, you kept reaching a new milestone. After hours, days, and weeks of practicing, one day you can finally walk with confidence and a steady gait. Now you can learn how to run, and guess what? All kinds of sports await you. If we dissect and analyze the process of a newborn baby all the way up to walking as a kid, it's actually a flow of constant flow in action. I believe this is nature's gift to humanity, that we're all born to flow. According to science or studies by Csikszentmihalyi, if someone wants to be in flow, he or she needs to be completely involved in what they're doing, so that the action and awareness can merge into one. As babies, we're naturally trying our best to concentrate on the task at hand. Someone passes you a piece of crappy toy, and you can spend half a day examining it. We were so new to this world that we constantly explore our surroundings with keen eyes. When learning to crawl or walk, we've got no choice actually, but to pay full attention to the activity, because it was so unfamiliar to us that if we don't focus, we hit our head, tumble, and hurt ourselves. I mean, we do sometimes get distracted, and oftentimes get distracted actually, but I would say that as babies, we actually learn things pretty damn well. It's said that when one is in flow, he or she loses the sense of self-consciousness or the ego mind. One of the reasons why it gets a bit tricky for grown-ups like us to tap into flow is because as people mature, they care more and more about their self-image. This attachment itself becomes an obstacle for entering flow because it distracts us from focusing on what we're supposed to do. But for babies, this is easy. We care not a single bit about our self-image. We probably don't even know what an quote-unquote individual self is. Will you look around to see if anyone might judge if you scratch your nose? Probably not. You just do whatever you like. Babies are so-called unfuckwittable, and that is why we tend to grow exponentially. When you're in flow, time passes by really quickly or slowly, and we seem to gain a sense of control over our actions. It doesn't come right from the start because it's normal that we struggle and feel that we're out of control at the beginning of every learning phase. But each time we overcome an obstacle and reach a new milestone, that's when we experience flow and gain a renewed sense of control over our physiology. The experience itself also becomes intrinsically rewarding, meaning that it becomes enjoyable and we do it for the sake of doing it. Is it intrinsically rewarding? Of course. It helps us to get more attention and aid us in acquiring food from those big giants. Now we can even run after our parents and cry out mommy and daddy when we're hungry. On a psychological level, the process is innately fun because when we acquire a new skill, it allows us to experience the world on a whole new level. Time becomes so fuzzy we don't even remember it. So what I've just explained above are some of the basic characteristics of being in flow. However, there are 3 additional preconditions to flow. And the first requirement is to have a goal or a clear set of goals. As an infant, the goal is simple, and that is simply learn how to do what the adults are capable of doing in general, such as learning how to walk or talk. Secondly, in order to get into flow, you need to find a balance between perceived challenges and perceived skills. Okay, this sounds a bit technical, but it's actually not. In layman terms, it means you want to be doing something that is slightly challenging than what you're currently capable of doing. Or in other words, to gradually step out of your comfort zone. Stephen Kotler recommends a 4% skill over challenge ratio. As a toddler, you can't jump from rolling to running within a week. That's probably like 1,000% more difficult than your current skill set. Instead, you need a progression from one milestone to the next. Steady improvements day after day. Over time, growth compounds and you eventually reach your goal. As babies, we're always making gradual improvements day after day, so this is checked. The third precondition of getting into flow is the presence of clear and immediate feedback. You want to know how well you're performing or making progress. Am I on the right track? For babies, feedback is received in terms of funness, the quality of how fun an activity is. It can also come in terms of love and attention, or physiological needs such as receiving food or milk. When we do or say something right or wrong, our parents are the ones who provide us with the answers. They play an extremely important role in providing immediate feedback by giving acknowledgement, love, attention, and yes, sometimes even by showing anger. But besides our parents, our own development is in and of itself a clear and obvious feedback. We know by nature that the ability to walk faster and steadier is a step forward compared to staggering around like a drunk baby, which is of course better than just crawling around like a lizard. And yes, better than just lying in bed all day long. So a quick sidetrack here. Let me know if you ever find anything interesting or anything you like or dislike about this podcast so that I can receive my clear and immediate feedback and maybe get into flow through podcasting. Anyways, each time we experience flow, we actually take what we learn from the conscious mind and integrate it into the subconscious. For example, when a baby first managed to take a few steps forward and fall back to the ground, his or her mind, just to be equal on both gender here, or our mind, converts the newfound kinesthetic knowledge of taking those few steps into the subconscious memory. The next day, we try to relive that memory again by practicing, reinforcing it, and slowly our muscles are being conditioned to help us learn how to walk. After years of walking, we now don't need to consciously think about how to do it anymore. We simply walk. The problem is, even though flow states help us master skills, it becomes harder and harder to access flow through the same activity. Well, unless you relearn how to cultivate a beginner's mind through mindfulness, which we might delve into in the future. But it gets boring to do just the same thing over and over again if you're not presented with a new challenge. Also, as we grew up, all the preconditions to flow mentioned above sometimes gets more difficult to be fulfilled. We don't really know what's the next goal in our life, right? Because most of us are presented with an outdated education system or are stuck in a pretty much screwed up working society that often doesn't present us with interesting new goals or challenges that are catered towards our individual growth and skill set. So we gradually lose touch with flow, and no one's going to provide us with clear and immediate feedback except ourselves, or unless we have good mentors in life. Worst of all, it's harder to focus on anything else since we get more easily distracted in life, let alone getting into flow. However, the good news is flow is still accessible to you and me. Now that you understand the basic characteristics and preconditions for getting into flow, you can try to cultivate the very same preconditions and triggers that will lead to flow. In the next or following episodes, I will discuss ways to re-inject flow into our lives using the same triggers. And I might dedicate an episode for adults in general and another episode for students. This episode is inspired by my previous experience working with babies, testing IQs of babies in rural China in relation to parenting for about a month time. And the program was under Stanford University's Rural Education Action Program back in 2017. The babies I met and played with have taught me so much about my own younger self, and more so about the importance of parenting when it comes to healthy cognitive development. I guess there are two main key takeaways from this podcast episode. One is that we've all experienced flow before in our childhood, and it's our natural ability to flow. So all we need to do is to relearn this process and learn how to find flow in our adult life, even if life gets more complicated. Secondly, if you're a parent out there, know that your love and attention, as well as your way of communicating with babies, matter and have a huge impact on their cognitive development. What I discovered was a direct correlation between the IQs of babies and the amount of time spent talking or reading to babies, even if they seem not to understand a single word. As babies, our brains are like sponges, soaking up everything through the subconscious mind. Anyways, that's all for today. If you enjoyed this podcast episode, feel free to share it with others, talk about it in your community, write a review, and give a rating on iTunes. I look forward to recording another episode soon, and let's echo flow.
Bye-bye!